Okay, I think we are live now.
So, hello, welcome everybody. This is the Amma Manson Network. This is the Parents Forum on the Amma Manson Network. Today, we have a very important discussion. And the more I've thought about this topic, I realize that it does not only apply to parents of special needs, it applies to each and every one of us living in the diaspora as well. It's important for all of us to join because even if you don't have a special needs child, sometimes you're going to need some kind of help for your child. You need to know how to access information, how to access support, how to receive support. But today we are talking about accessing or getting support for your special needs child, how to go about it, what are the do's and don'ts. And we have here with us Mrs. Arthur. She goes by the first name Marv. We know her as Marv. Marvelyn. Eh, and I would like for her to introduce herself. She's a very special guest today because she herself, she has a special needs child. So it's a subject that she is well versed in. It's her life experience. So she's here to teach us. And I hope that each and every one of us we are able to take something from it and use it when applicable. So Marv, can you please introduce yourself and tell us more about you and your wonderful child?
Yeah, I'm Inatha, and I have a child on the autism spectrum, and I know it's difficult. You work with a lot of professionals, people you don't know, and you have to talk to them every day about your child. They ask you questions, and you have to go to lots of appointments as well. So you are meeting new people every day, and you are supposed be to have effective communication with them because
Mhm.
most of you are relying on them in as far as their health and everything to support you and your child, especially your child. So you need to be as kind. You need to be able to put your emotions aside, and you need to be always present. So yeah, I think
Okay, thank you very much for that. Without any bias, we know that research has shown us that accessing normal health care, even for Black people, is very tough. We know that there are discrepancies in the quality and the level of healthcare that you can receive, even when you're not a special needs parents. Now we are wondering when it comes to being Black or being of African origin and accessing special needs in a country that is not even your home country, whatever, we don't know. I would like for us to first start from the basis that what does it take for a child to be classified as special needs? And what are some of the things that stop some of us, people of African descent, from getting the right support or accessing the right support? What are some of the stumbling blocks that you have experienced or known somebody else to experience?
yeah. First to the stumbling blocks
Mm-hmm.
that stop us from accessing. I think I've said this before. It's because of our culture and the way we see having a child with a disability or any form of disability. It's in most of people's minds, they think it's a curse or the child is demonized or the child herself or himself is a witch. So many
Mm-hmm.
of it. So when you travel and you get here, you get to the diaspora, like you realize that it's been there for a long time and plans have been made for people like that. They are not being put aside. When you look back home, it's not as common. Most of the time, you find somebody with a disability is either begging by the road, or, I remember I went to school in Jolu, and there was this Jolu School for Special Needs.
True.
We used to go, and when you go there, you can't, the whole walls are so high, you can't even see, we only see them going through there, and it was quite tough. So the culture itself makes us, one is ashamed to have a child with a special need. Second, the person thinks that because they've done something, they are guilty of the condition of their child. Either they are the one that caused them, or they themselves are cursed or anything. We don't know the scientific background of the research that have been made to identify the reasons why children get certain conditions, so that makes us, a lot of us, very ashamed and reluctant to come out. So the cultural difference is a major thing regarding this issue. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw that Ellen has joined. Ellen, welcome.
Hello.
We are happy to have you here.
Good.
Okay, so maybe somebody has also just joined us and they are wondering, special needs. What are special needs kids? What does it mean for a child to be classified as special needs?
Should I go?
Yeah, Ellen, you can go.
Okay. Yeah, so when we talk of special needs, depending on where you are, this terminology is used very differently. But broadly, what we're looking at is that a child who, for one reason or the other, their development is not more like the typical, or is not in line with what most of the people in the population. It could be either their physical development, cognitive development, or an aspect of their life. So this is a term that we, in most places like UK and other places, they say special needs. So that means that they have an additional needs in terms of their treatment, their care. Additional things have to be put in place to meet their needs. And for some people, depending on the level of function, so that's why some people class, okay, so in terms of the intellectual ability, how much can they comprehend? In terms of school, how much are they pulling their weight? In terms of processing stimulus and other things. So what, like, loosely we can say that they have an additional needs. That child, something needs, they need an additional input to either help them reach a particular milestone that they need to, or for some children they may not be able to reach it, and how they have to do things have to be adapted. So we have to use an alternative way of helping them to achieve. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, when it comes to making decisions about your special needs child, we know that there are several decisions that you have to make, health-wise, education-wise, and so on. How should a parent go about making this decision, and at what point should you bring in the help of experts? Marv.
Well, I think in the UK, for instance, when your child is diagnosed with a need, immediately, I think at the time of my child, they give you a pamphlet giving with information on all the people you need to contact. One thing is, one child's need might be totally different from the other. So you, the parents, would sometimes, it's a shock to you depending on the age of your child, you have no knowledge, especially when the child is younger. You would then have to come and assess the child. And they teach you the milestones that the child is supposed to be clicking. So you then test it. Then you realize that, okay, this and this and this. And then that's when the appointments starts coming in. So as soon as your child is diagnosed, the references are already done by the practitioner who identified whatever was going on with your child. You just have to fulfill those appointments. And then you would have to be keeping records of any person that you see. You need to write down any professional's name that you meet, because you need to go on contacting that professional. So you might see a speech therapist, you might see physical, occupational therapist. You might see, depending on your child's deficiency, you would have to keep records of anyone that contacts you, any list. And the waiting list is very long. Mm-hmm. So you have time to wait at all. It may take you days on the phone trying to contact one person. So immediately, you just start, as soon as you get the diagnosis, start the following up. And because it's through the process of meeting these professionals that you would get to understand what is actually going on with your.
Thank you for that.
Okay, yeah, Marv, let me follow up from where you've landed. Mm-hmm. Yes, let me do. You've talked about when you've received the diagnosis. Sometimes it may be before you receive a diagnosis. Let's look at a child with autism. Yeah, most of the time, for a child to be given the diagnosis, they look at key markers until age 3, so that they are, like, I stand to be corrected, but the last time I checked, they will be looking at different things, and by age 3, they will make a formal diagnosis. But you are the parents. Even if that child is your first child, you might have grown around other people. Yeah, unless very few people who may not know that, okay, a child at the age of 6 months need to at least be able to sit. They should have a trunk control. So a child who have cerebral palsy, you have given birth to a child, you take the child home, you go for weighing, you realize that they are very, very, let's say, extra flexible, like cerebral palsy, the type that the child is very weak and they are struggling to even keep their head control. As soon as you notice this thing, you take the first step. Because parents who are proactive, and for most of these conditions, the key is early intervention. So early identification, early diagnosis, early intervention, they are still developing. And you've mentioned the waiting list. So if you are waiting to keep waiting for the GP referral, by the time, if you don't first go and say, this is what I've observed, what can be done? Who do I need to see? And keep knocking at the door. And for some people, if you can, you seek like private, because these things, the timelines are so key. But in terms of practice, there's one thing that I have noticed in our community, in our Ghanaian community, and yeah, that's what I know. You see a child, you see like something is off, because with your professional eye, you can easily, let's say, go to church, so a child, they come to church, baby dedication, and you notice something's a bit off. As someone with a knowledge, approaching the mother to kind of say, yeah, I've observed this. What do you think? Or have you observed that? Some people are a bit hesitant to open up that conversation. They've seen, but they don't want it to be discussed. They've seen, they want to cover it up. They've seen, they don't want to open up. And I've got this conflict so many times when I see, do I have a duty of care to kind of let that person know This is what I've observed. This is what can be done. And as much as it's a challenge, that for the person to accept that, okay, this is, or this may be going on, let's get it investigated. That's the whole thing. Because I don't know whether it's the people, the whole process that they have to go through, that they want to block it, or they think a miracle could happen, and even our understanding of what is going on. Because that's the key thing: awareness, knowing something is off. Yes, I know children who were born, or who were born just before COVID, have stayed at home. Their social interaction skills is so much limited. But if your child is 3, fine, they've not interacted with other people, but you are home. The child is not talking. The child have these very, very repetitive movements. And the doctors have even identified, giving you appointments. Come. And you're like, I don't want somebody to diagnose my child. It's because of COVID and the child has not been in school. And like, I literally want to be like, come on, like go, like, but you can't take somebody's child. It's the mom's decision, the parent decision, to be able to seek for that help that is required. So that's a bit of the challenge, and that is what's mostly delayed. And by the time you would delay till your child is, let's say, 7, 8 years, a lot that could have been done, you've missed that opportunity. And in
Right.
terms of practice, what I've realized is, when they can carry the child at their back, when they can put the child in a wheelchair and push the child around, they don't want to go. But as soon as they get that 8-year-old who is a big tall, they can no longer carry that child. They wish the child can walk and be independent. Then that's the time that they are pushing for the service there. But if you bring them very early on, we start very early, then we can make that progress that you deserve when the child is at 10 years and 11 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
Well, I
early
completely
intervention. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because I believe I read somewhere that, for example, autism can be diagnosed as early as 18 months
Yeah.
if the mother and the doctor are working closely together. But an official diagnosis can be written out at 3 years. But as early as 18 months, you can already know this is the direction we are going towards. However, in Black and brown children, the diagnosis is as late as 5.5 years before they get that diagnosis because of the things. And I've had a personal experience where one of my best friends, I saw that her son there was something off, but it took me a year to even gather the courage to even tell her, oh, sweetheart, I think XYZ is wrong, and I think we should see somebody. And after I told her, it took her also a year for her to even go to see the doctor, because she was like, no, every child is different, which is true. Every child is different. Every child develops. By the time she actually went to see a doctor, I think her son was like 4 years old, 4 or 5, before she first got accepted that there was something wrong. And like you said, even at 4 or 5, he was very big for his age, very big. And then at that point, he still wanted to be carried. He still was very baby like. And then I think that is where her strength started failing her. So she needed extra help. And then she finally accepted that, okay, I'll go and see somebody for help. So I completely agree with that. Now, we know that having a special needs child is a full-time job. It is a full-time job. So for parents who are having these kids, when it comes to finding financial help for their special needs child, to finance their life. So because for most of the learning that happens for special needs children is through play. Play is therapy, therapy is play. And sometimes you need certain toys, you need certain tools, and so on. And all of that costs money. How do parents with special needs child finance this situation in their life? Then maybe Marv would like to start.
Yeah, maybe Marv start, and I'll add a little bit of Ghana, my experience working in Ghana.
Yeah, you would have to work. It's still work. I know that there are the finances in the UK, which people talk about, I laugh when I hear it, you know. And for some cultures, they leave the children for them to deteriorate, because the worse your child, the more money you get. Yeah. So even if the child will walk, they don't do that. What Ellen was saying earlier, they don't do that, because if the child cannot walk, whatever is being given to the parents will go far than if the child can walk. So something, this is my decision. Okay, let me just not, they leave the children to deteriorate that old. Okay, so I'll break it down. There are 3 levels. There's the high, under autism, I know that there is high, moderate, and mild. Whatever money that you get is given to you according to that per month to help you buy the toys and support the child. But that money, I will tell you, I don't know, it depends on how you want to help your child. For me, I believe that my child can be capable of managing himself with time. So I'm not going to allow him to act as a child who cannot do anything, so that he becomes capable of managing himself. So the activities that I like to do with him are activities to push him to improve his cognitive abilities and other things. He's very active. So it's just the speech that is slow, and the understanding here, he has understanding. So for me, working on his language skills and then his social skills, that's what I'm prioritizing on. But if your child is in a wheelchair, because you are given the higher rate, you are entitled to a car to be able to move the child around. So that money is towards that. And people reach out for the higher rate. If you get someone who is knowledgeable to fill the form for you, which is an emotional form, for me, I hate that filling that form. To fill the form for you, that you might get a higher rate, even if you are moderate or something, but it depends on how you fill that form for you to get it. They don't come and look at your child to assess the child. They have a certain rating system that they use to grade your child. So your child might be entitled to mobility if they are a danger to themselves. But if they are not entitled to mobility. Mobility is different from the normal financial support that they give them. But it comes under disability allowance. It's called DLA. So that is given to your child. Aside that, if the child is in school, the child is assessed by therapists, and they will determine that the child needs this and that and that, and that is provided at school. If the child is in nursery, that assessment, they are given money to the school to provide toys for your child. Unless they get to primary, then that changes. So it's dependent on the level of disability of your child that you will get support. But ordinarily, the DLA is what is given, and the rate that they give is for everyone to know. So yeah, for me, if you ask me, you will have to work to support. It depends on what you want your child to achieve or to become, or the needs of your child, to determine the amount of money that you need to, yeah. So you might have to be in work. There are times that, for me, when my child was diagnosed early, I didn't understand it. I stopped work and decided to train myself to understand what's going on, because I had no clue. And I was paying so much for childcare. I think 1,300 in nursery at that time. And I'll go to work, run around 2 hours in and out. And I realized, he's just been in the nursery. He's always just playing, nothing. He doesn't engage in the stuff that they were doing. It was just, I said, he's wasting money. So I decided to, find something less to do so that I can have much time with him and understand what's going on. So it depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah, so in terms of the UK, you get the support.
Mm,
Structures are in place.
yeah.
But what tends to happen back home was that you have a child with additional needs, and that's it. It's more like a death sentence with services not available. That was very, very, very heartbreaking. So, as much as we're talking about people not accessing the services, there are very few services that are in the capitals like Kumasi, Accra, that you can go and see an occupational therapy. So, let me break it a little bit down. I went to Ghana in 2012. And as at 2012, that was the first time that University of Ghana has started training occupational therapists in the country. So until 2011, there was no like a building or a department for occupational therapy. There was one structure in Accra Psychiatric Hospital, but there was no qualified occupational therapist working there. They have some occupational therapy assistants who have been trained on the job in the 80s, and they were doing kind of like activities with the inmate. So in terms of PDICS, there was none. The only traces that we could gather was volunteers from the UK and other places who go to Ghana and work with some of these NGOs. So there was this brilliant facility in Apam Junction, Mephibosheth Training Center. It's a special school for children with physical disability. It's run by a pastor and the wife who uh, uh, who, who, who is an American physiotherapist. Yeah, but she's late now. So these were some of the few places you could see traces that children have been touched by professionals. And I'm saying we started occupational therapy in 2012. Speech and language therapy training started after occupational therapy training. And they started at a master's level with the first cohort of 13 people. So you can see even the professionals who will say, okay, this child may need this toy. They are not even there. So parents actually navigate the path a bit more blindly. They don't understand the whole process, and there's no additional support that they need. And like you rightly said, even here, that there are some structures in place, some supports in place, you still have to work to support it. But the parents in Ghana, what is she looking at? Who is she or he leaving that child with to go out there and work? And sometimes they don't even have the work themselves. So it can be really, really challenging when you're looking at that place. I think for now, we are just at the level that people are understanding that this is it and this is how we address the issue. Awareness have been created. I think now people know there's a lot more awareness about autism. And also, when you consider children with special needs, remember that children who are born preterm, most of them tend to have the additional needs. They kind of miss some milestones and their development kind of
right.
delayed. Yes. So, and preterm is a thing that happened in Ghana. We have children who are born, have to be put in incubators and other things. So all these children are adding up to the numbers of these children with these additional needs that we really, really had to help them out. Marv, I want to ask the questions. So when you went out there to work, did the amount that you were receiving in terms of the support for the child, was that reduced? Because for some parents, that is their fear that, oh, when I go out to work, the support that I'm receiving for my child will be cut because some of them are means tested and other things.
Yeah, it's there, and you have. So you would have to work 16 hours at least. For me, I got to a point I was a high earner. So when you earn more than £1,600, that's the cutoff limit for you to get anything. But you will get the DELA, but you won't get anything from your universal credit or whatever. So that's, and yeah, but I've realized that if you work privately as self-employed, you then don't have a cutout point. That's
Right.
you don't have a cutout point.
Good. Yeah. So what you're saying is that you can still work to get the additional income, and you can seek the professional help to help you to understand how to navigate the whole system and everything. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, for most people that you meet, they're like, you know, it's because of Kwejo, I can't do anything. No, Kwejo's in your life does not mean your life has to stop.
Yeah,
And
true.
if you truly want to support Kwejo, it means that I'm using Kwejo as like a hypothetical name, not anybody's, not any of my patients. Or yeah, but you still have to go out there. And also, you know, the benefit to you that sometimes can be very depressive because,
Yeah.
oh, I had Kwejo and that was where my life ended. No, it doesn't have to be like that. Seek the help. If it's even a day or two, that's you can focus on your life, your work, go out there. That is the reason why we seek for the help, to still make sure that you are fit, you are healthy, you are in good shape, to give you the energy to kind of support the child who is in your care. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. However, I also do understand. My daughter is, I wouldn't classify her as special needs, but I think I've mentioned before that she has dyslexia, and for like 2-3 years ago, for a period of like 24 months and even more, our afternoons were filled with going to different therapies and taking her, making sure she's going to sports and all of that. And I'm working. And so I'm wondering, if you have a special needs child, I cannot even imagine the toll, because for me, it was just too much. It was too much. And I have 2 kids. And for me, it was like, wow, imagine if you really have a child. I can imagine why some people are so exhausted that they just give up on life, because psychologically, I can say at some point it was defeating me psychologically, because it was just like, oh my God, we have to go 3 times a week. And just like you said in the UK, sometimes, or in Ghana, I think, even here in Germany, sometimes getting to the right expert is not so easy. And the best person to work with her is in another town. So that means we have to drive to that other town to get to this special or this expert. And it meant, up and down, and then coming home and cooking. And then my other child, who doesn't have this condition, I have to also make sure she's thriving and she's not being ignored, and all my time is not going to my first child. So I can imagine, if you have more kids, it can be exhausting for some parents. So how should parents deal with this? This, sometimes I felt very lonely because, my husband works away from home a lot. So I felt very extremely lonely, and my mental well-being was not there. It was like, okay, at one point I was like, I needed a break. I don't want to do any therapy. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go anywhere. And at the same time, then I felt bad for myself or for my child, because I felt like, oh my God, I'm giving up on my child. But I did take a break in between and resume later on, because I needed to gather myself. It was too much for me. How should, especially mothers, because most of the time when this happens, it falls on us, the women, the most. How should mothers take care and they don't feel like they're doing this all alone? Because there's a lot of loneliness when you have a child and you're not expecting that something should go wrong, and then something goes wrong, and you have to be the only person to, a man can support, but most of the time, I would say 80% of the work is, or 90, is being done by the women alone. How do we protect our mental health in this case?
The main thing is use the support available. And that's the benefit of support groups. So in Ghana, what we started doing was to form support group for the mothers. And there's one now in Shayo Sudoku that the mothers, they come in, they kind of learn from each other. That's the point that the therapist there is at. But in all honesty, the first step to protecting your mental health is making sure that you've put yourself to one, understand the condition that you are dealing with, having a good understanding. If it means going to seek out for that therapist or that professional who will be honest with you, like not that like a Ghanaian who go to see a British and you know how they cover their words nicely. Your child looks like he's very much excited when he's in class. No, when your child comes to class, he's disturbed, like he disturbs a lot. So somebody who will let you know fully the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that when I had these honest conversations with parents, they really appreciate. And one person told, for her, it was not even a learning disability. The child, the little finger was not fully developed, and they had a surgery. So the this finger was like a dropping or most of the time stretching, and it was very, very, it was a physical disability that they were really struggling to process. And when I had a conversation, and I was like, it's not your fault. You did nothing wrong. This is a condition, and your child is going to live with it. Once the person comes to that acceptance that the child is living with it, then you can go to the step that we are managing. Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
So they come to that acceptance. This is the situation. It's not curable. Yes, Jesus healed the lame, but in this instance, we don't have the evidence to back that a child have gone to a prayer camp or a mountain or something to be healed until we have that. This is our understanding. So this is the pathway that we are going to use for your child. And I think as a mother, if you're able to process it to that level and fully understand the diagnosis and fully understand the pathway that you are going to go through, that is the key point. And that is when people begin to live at peace and begin to know that, okay, I'm putting in to do what I can. Yes, I'm not going to let my child decline. I'm going to help maintain whatever skills that my child have at the moment, whatever skill that they can develop, I will support them, but also I leave the rest because this child, this is him, this is how he presents, this is his abilities. And if you get a parent in that situation, you can work better with them. But if they are still looking for a cure, I read a post on Facebook, like one of the big women platform, and I was really heartbroken. That time I was not very much on social media. I really wanted to put this lengthy chat, and I'm like, we're not looking for any cure. The person was asking, is there any like prayer camp he can send the child to for healing? And she clearly mentioned that she got a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. And I'm like, it's clear. You're looking for healing, for cure. Like, why don't you put that energy into helping to establish the trauma control, learning how to feed that child, learning how to make sure that the child can sleep properly, learning how to position the child? Yes. Yeah, so the full understanding of where you are at, where you can get to, and how you can manage it. That is where, and yes, I don't know who coming to watch, but if we have fathers, this is not only the woman's job. In a supportive family, places where both parents or both guardians support, the burden on one person can be less. If not, as a father or as a partner, if you don't support, you realize that you have two casualties. That's why I always tell people the woman can go like can can have a mental illness breakdown, and now you have two people. You have the child who needs, okay, yeah. So you have the child and also the mom, and you have two people. Even one person, you were not involved. How much more two people? So
Mhm.
take this opportunity, educate yourself together as the parent of the child, as the guardian of the child, so that you know what journey you are on. And that is the main thing, that it has helped people to survive and to, like, uh, my choice of way, it has helped people to manage the situation better. Yeah.
Okay, let's hear from Marv. Marv is still on the mental health of the carer of this child.
Yeah, as Ellen rightly said, when your child is diagnosed, you need, if for me, I think you yourself, you need therapy. You need
Oh,
to
I completely agree.
you admit that this is a blow and I need help. And then when there's a program, when they give out the sheet, there's something called Early Bird. Early Bird is a course that's UK Autistic Society gives to parents. As at the time that my child was diagnosed, I was like pushing and pushing. So when I went, because my child was diagnosed in nursery, and I opened up, I told you the last time, I opened up myself to learn more. There was a 6 months waiting list on that one. But immediately the next week, they called me that there's a course open. So I started the Portage course. Less than a year, I got into the Early Bird course. The Early Bird course, you can wait more than a year to go on that course. So less than a year, I went on the Early Bird course. And these courses makes you understand your child. You then understand that this is a reality. And there are, for me, if we talk about autism, there are autistic people who are still living normal life, but they see the world different.
Right.
So in
Yeah,
my mind,
very high function.
yeah, so my attitude is, well, my child can live a normal life, but he will see the world differently. So how am I going to help him understand the world in a way that he will be happy living in it and also progress in it and become the person, an adult who can control himself in whichever environment that he finds himself in. So the focus for me now is to help him grow into an adult that he can become. There's no time for being emotional. Then, when you go for the course, you understand what's going on. I'm not saying don't cry. When you need to cry, cry.
Right.
Go through the emotions. And through the emotions, you will heal. And you speak to people that will explain things to you, and come from the innocent, non-understanding side. One thing about people from our culture is we tend to pretend as if we know so much. And we tend to be angry and we tend to be aggressive because of our emotion. But when you are in the diaspora, what you observe is they don't work with their emotion. They like to deal with the facts. So even though it's an emotional situation, try to learn about the facts of the situation. The facts being the kind of help that can be provided to you. You shouldn't think that everybody is going to put things on your lap. No. There's the truth that there's so many people who need support. So don't think they are going to give you everything. That's a fact. The fact that to be able to survive, you need to work hard to support your child. It's a fact. You shouldn't, it's a needy situation. It's a desperate situation. That's a fact, but you have to be real about it as well. So work through your emotions first and remove yourself from that emotion when you meet professionals, because you need to be able to relay whatever that is going on without emotion so that they can help you. I'm saying this, it's very important, because if we are brought up to be emotional and we are angry and we feel entitled, it all adds up when we need help. You need to remove that and put that aside and deal with the facts of the situation. Know your child, because when your child is diagnosed, the professionals are not with you in your house. They have 30 minutes to 1 hour window to look at your child. You are the one that they will be asking questions. So you have to have knowledge of what's going on with your child on a daily basis. And that information, you should be able to relay it. So that's why your emotions doesn't have to be there, because it would take that time. Sometimes you are not 30 minutes and your child is going through sleepless nights. And you have to assess the situation. If you go and you are crying, nobody has time for you. So you get a book. Anything that happens, you are now the chief inspector of police of your child. You write everything down so that when you go to meetings, you just have a look and then you say it, boom, 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 boom. And professionals like to work with people who know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and it makes it go very fast. The next day they write to you this, and then you follow up. So your one friend is a diary. If you're talking to somebody and you don't understand something, ask questions. And the way you ask questions is being kind. Could you please tell me this? Could you please explain? I don't understand it. If they don't give you the help, you say, oh, can you please recommend someone for me regarding the situation, because I can't deal with it, So these are the things that you should invest your time in learning. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No problem.
These are the things that you should invest in learning when you find yourself in this situation, so that it will help you. Because if you don't get the help that you need, it doesn't help with your mental health. I know you asked a question about your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Get these sorted first. And then there will be the times that you'll be thinking about family. The people you keep close are people who understand situation. Those who don't understand the situation, I'm sorry to say, you don't need them around you.
Right.
Because even if you explain, they won't understand.
True.
You need those who and there are people who don't understand, and they will be reserved and will be observing. Okay. And they ask you a question, you answer. But those who keep like you are not doing the right thing, you don't need negativity around you. You don't need that. All you need is support. So you keep those who are still with you as friends. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised because your child becomes a nuisance. So you should be aware of these. When they invite you to a place, you say no. Some of them ask you because they just want to be kind. They know you can't come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you should be the first one. You have to keep the power in your hands. I'm sorry, I cannot make it. When you are invited to a place, a party in a park or something, if you know the place, fine. If you don't, if you know the person's house, you have to remember, oh, does my child like this? Does my child like that? That's my child. How is he going to cook? How many people are there? The smells. the reason why you have to learn about this, especially for me, autistic kids, they don't like smells. They have sensitivities that bothers them. So my child can be very calm and be everywhere. But when the triggers of certain things are in certain places, he's a different person altogether. So if I'm going somewhere, I have to know these things. So you, the parents, you are your child's advocate. You ask when you are being invited to places, you need to get that information so that you can prepare. And when you go to a place, you should understand, and you need really to be there. Give yourself 30 minutes. I'm in, I'm out. Let the person understand I can't keep long.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, you should be self-aware. The person wants your presence, but they don't want you to come and spoil their program. So you should be self-aware, and knowing this, when you realize that this thing is going wrong, I'm off, I need to go. Oh, wait, oh, this or that. No, because they can't deal with your child when anything happens. They would then blame you that you can't control your child. So to avoid all these, just leave.
Okay, right.
So, and because I'm saying this because it all comes under your mental health. You end up coming feeling sad, angry.
Yeah, right.
You don't need all that rubbish.
And then you'll be angry because you would not understand why people cannot have this sympathy or understand why you are going through the things that you are going through. And that will even make you mad more. And it will also increase this feeling of loneliness within you, because you feel like it's just you against the whole world. Nobody understands you.
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay. So
so let me add something. I remember something. You know how we were socialized, how we've been socialized in our community growing up. There was the experts and there's the me. You go to the hospital, you tell the doctor what you come, and before they are done, they write a report, like a diagnosis, give you medication. You can't take this attitude when you have a child with special needs. You have to work collaboratively, and that is the key word, collaboratively. You mentioned the 30 minutes. When you come, that's the time that I've allocated for each client. And as I'm doing the exercise, as I'm doing the therapy, key things, they'll give you leaflets. As parents, if you go and the therapist, let's say it's a muscle strengthening that they are doing. If they move the leg, let's say up, down, ask them, why are you doing that? If I'm doing it, how often? How many times? Because you spend most of the time with the child, and that's how you make the progress. So you don't go to therapy and depend on just the 30 minutes time. No, you learn. And therapists are very happy to teach you, and they give you homework. That's what some people put it. They'll be giving you lots of leaflets, but assuming that you go and read and kind of understand what you have to do. But if you're very proactive, when they are doing it, you ask them to teach you what they are doing. The ones that you can practice, you can continue. How can you incorporate it around the things that you do? So if it's like handwriting that we are looking at, holding a spoon that we are looking at, okay, you're trying to work on the fine motor skills. When I'm feeding the child, how can I incorporate this in? You'll be shown and you start practicing it. So by the time you go for your next 30 minutes appointment, you can see progress and you not see that downward spiral from where you left off. Yeah. So that's collaborative working together.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ellen. I completely agree with you. Now, when it comes to the educational needs of your special needs child, when should you send your child to an inclusive school, and when should you send a child to a special needs school? Sometimes it's a decision. In some countries, it's a decision that you can take. In other countries, there are specialists who take this decision for you. And I here in Germany, I know that when a child is in the kindergarten, by the time, because we stay in the kindergarten here till our almost before our 6th birthday, and then somebody from the Ministry of Health comes, checks you, writes a report, And then once they write this report, it's very, very difficult for you to have this report changed, and then they make the decision for you. However, there are some parents who are able to fight for their kids to go to an inclusive school, and some parents sometimes also get stuck with this because they don't even know when to start preparing the kindergarten for the idea that this is the direction I want my child to go to. So as parents, as professionals, how can you advise parents when it comes to this?
Should I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
This one is something that I'm still learning on that side, and it's a tough one. In the UK, you have to solely rely on professionals, because when they assess your child, they would tell you, oh, we've seen this, we've seen that, and then what your child can do as well. So for me, because I was open, my child went to an assessment center for part of his nursery. So the next step was for him to go for the choice of a moderate facility, because there is the severe and there's the moderate facility, and then there is the in-between school, and then there's the mainstream school, which is for kids. But there is a mainstream school with facility for special needs as well. But currently, a lot of them are closing down the mainstream school with special needs because they don't have enough professionals in there to be doing both. My experience was that when my child finished, it was supposed to go to a moderate facility. One of the things that I would say to help some parents is when you are signing forms for people to have access to your child, professionals assessing your child, if you tell me, I will say no. Anything, just write a note that they should contact you first. Because what happened was someone came from a school, assessed the children, and decided that my son shouldn't come to the school that I had chosen. So he wasn't placed in school because they had said they cannot manage his needs. Okay. Meanwhile, if that hadn't been done, he would have had access to the school. So there was a confusion there at that time. So with that, I would say when you're filling the form, especially when your child is young, allow a bit of time before coming into conclusions. So this decision was made for my child, in my case, because the form that you fill that you allow accessibility, I take it that it's okay for professionals to look. And then someone came in, did an assessment, and then decided to rate him a rate that doesn't belong to him at all. You see, so for me, if you ask me, I'll say be cautious about that. So I have changed that. I need to be informed who is coming in to see my child, for what and whatever, and can I be present?
I completely agree.
Yeah,
I completely
definitely.
agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Because even here in Germany, some of the biggest mistakes that people make, I mean, in a Ghanaian community that I can speak of, is that when you take a child to kindergarten, when you're registering the child, they ask you, is a kindergarten allowed to contact your pediatrician? And most of the time, if there is, I wouldn't say something wrong, if something is, a little bit different about your child, sometimes this conversation between the kindergarten and the doctor spills over to the Ministry of Health. All three do not make independent evaluation. Because the kindergarten said this or because the doctor said this, they all make their decision along that line. And then it's very, very difficult for you to get an independent evaluation, because it will just sound like all three are just echoing each other's thoughts, you know, and it's not something really authentic. You get that feeling that it's not like an authentic evaluation of your child. So when you're signing these forms, even from when you register a child in kindergarten, you have to watch out for these things, you know. It's just there, it's innocent. Is it okay for I take the yes, because I was thinking, okay, what if something happens to the child in school and they need to contact? That is what I was thinking. But now that I've met so many Ghanaians whose kids have ended up being sent to special needs school, I have come to realize we shouldn't take that. The kindergarten should make its evaluation. The pediatrician should have her own decision, and the Ministry of Health should have their own decision as well. And then we see if there is a common thread amongst it. Then we can see if the child needs something. Amma just joined. Hello, Amma. She says, why would a school need to contact your well, this is Germany. This is Germany. This is the land of bureaucracy. So this is Germany, it's the land of bureaucracy, and you know, the land of constantly filling forms. Here, if you take your child to the kindergarten, they will ask you, is it okay for us to talk to your pediatrician? Because you need a special license. I wouldn't say it's a license. You need something called U9. This is U9, and it's an evaluation that says a child has the right motoric skills and what social skills, emotional skills, sometimes even the ability to write. All of this is evaluated during the U9 checkup. Okay, it's a checkup that is done on children when they turn 5. And the doctor will write a report, because you need 3 things to go to primary school. You need this U9 report, then you need something from the kindergarten, and then you need the Ministry of Health. They also come and then they do stuff differently. They say riddles. For example, they ask if a car is fast, a house is what, and the child should say something. Maybe a house is big, something like that. It's really a funny evaluation, you know. All 3, you need that together to be able to go register your child in the 1st grade. And then they write a final report. So if they talk to each other, in my experience, they all write the same thing. But if you don't let them talk to each other, everybody writes something. And most of the time, you see that they write better recommendation for the child. They can say, oh, this child can go to the 1st grade and give it a try for the 1st half of the school year. If the child is not able to cope, then it's okay for the child to come back to kindergarten for 1 more year. Because you can go to a primary school with 6 or with 7, depending on the date of birth of the child. And it's been proven that it helps when they all have 3 different evaluations, as opposed to having 1 evaluation. So maybe now I'll let Ellen say something.
Yeah, so that was what I was coming to. Usually when the
Ellen, let me say this thing with this.
Okay.
With in the UK, they give the child, if a child is assessed, they give the child an EHCP plan, which is an educational healthcare plan. And with this educational healthcare plan, all the professionals are supposed to assess the child and write the targets that they set for the child for their education for that academic year. With the point that the professionals speak to themselves, and then they write a conclusion as to this is what the child can do and what the child cannot do, and this. You have to agree. You have to be in that meeting. It's the parents' right. So you are in that meeting. But sometimes, because they meet at the background, you don't know what they've discussed. So if you, the parent, turn up and you've not listed down in facts, and you don't get your teacher or the school to support you as to what you're saying is true and be able to argue your points out, then it means your child is going to suffer throughout that, because that is what they are going to use to give the time that the occupational therapist is going to give, the speech therapist is going to give. You get, in the whole year, you can get only 8 hours per term. Divide 8 hours per term into the academic year, which means about 5 minutes of therapy for your child. That is not do anything.
Yeah, and currently most schools in the UK don't have occupational therapists. I always get like emails, can we send OT students around? We really are struggling.
Yeah.
So back to the original question. When you first get a diagnosis, it's very daunting and you have to weigh all your options. So
Read my eyes.
the special schools, oh, the special schools have been set up so that the child within the standard school, the therapist who is not there within that special school, there is a provision to have an OT, SLT, physiotherapist in there. Ideally, in the ideal world, there should be these professionals there to give more input. Okay. So, as a parent, what I will say is seek and continually seek for a review of your child and take all these letters and all these mails that they send and keep kind of a diary of what your child, the functions or their abilities as they are progressing. So let me tell you one thing. There was this child that at home, the child will never feed at home, but the child was feeding independently, putting on his jacket at home. And we were trying to explore what's happening because this child, the parent comes and say all these things that the child can't do, but in the school the child have these skills and they can do. So in this instance the school was even like saying the child is more high functioning compared to the other children who were there. What was happening at home? Mom, caregivers don't have that time to let the child to sit for that 30 minutes, 1 hour, make a mess and independently feed. So they will quickly feed the child, put on the jacket and they are off. So you see where the disparities are. So the school, sometimes it's not all that they are, let's say, downplaying on your child's ability, but what have they observed? They can also feedback positively into what the child is doing and we can so always seek for constant review. I'm currently going through this situation myself. I've just brought my children to the UK and it's hell. Like none of them have a learning disability, but because they've come from Africa, they've put them in different grades, different places, all over the places that I'm really pushing to make sure that they get to the right place that they have to be. Okay. So my daughter got here in January. She has to write a SAT in May. We did what we could, but 5 months, how much can you do? So we going through and reviewing and constantly making sure it's a bit tough. They will kind of tell you all the nice ways. Yeah, this one is what they brought from primary school. Yes, but whilst they are here, what are they doing? How much are they doing? How much energy are they putting? What is the performance? Let's have a chat about this and put it at the right place. So the constant review, engaging, working with them. Yes, we like to work with you when you come. We know those parents who work with us and those who make our life easier. Okay, let me leave it here.
Anyway, Amma says that for her, she only gives out the possibility with the contact number only for emergency purposes, but everything else must go through her. And now she writes again that my son was an elective mute for years, especially at school. Yes, children can have two completely different personalities at home and at school. It can be two separate personalities. I experience it even in children who are not special needs, that they can be like devils at home and angels in school, or the other way around, It depends. I have one Russian girl who actually bites her mom at home, but she's the sweetest girl I know in my class. She is so sweet with me, so respectful with me. And recently I heard that at home she's not like that at all.
Yeah.
So it depends, Let's see what Amma says. Amma says, and those SAT grades will affect the rest of her predictions without a fight from the parents. Yeah. That's true.
Currently, my situation is I do so much with my child. So he does a lot at home. And when he goes to school, so it's like I am saying my son can do this and do that and do that. But at school, he's not doing it. And it's been a major hurdle for me this year, academic year, when he went back. He literally doesn't want to go to school. And my observations, because I keep records, is that the environment is not suitable for him. He is more capable than his peers. He's an active person with kids who are being held to do stuff. He likes to do things on his own. So he finds it boring. So as soon as he gets to the time that they had to take him off the bus, as soon as he would get on the bus, but he wouldn't sit still. So they had to remove him off the bus for a couple of weeks, you know. And, you know, some of the schools, the reports that I'm getting back is telling me, oh, but he's not like this at school. He's more cooperative. But the teacher is telling me something different. The headmistress is telling me something different. And, you know, and that comes back to the communication, where I have to take the decision that I have to go through. The best way is through a legal system, because then you become the enemy. The teachers are doing their best, but I can see my child is not happy. And it affects sleep, it affects everything. So the burden then comes on you, the parent. Because he's not happy, he's not willing to go in. If your child wakes up and says, I want to go on the train, instead of going to school where his peers are, that he will find some comfort and be happy, then there's something wrong. You know, so unless you don't understand, because I know I do a lot with him and he expects that. So if he goes to school and they are not doing that with him, he finds the place boring. And it's not, it's supposed to be the other way around or something like that. I don't know, you know. So I had to reduce the number of activities I do with him by going out, just to take the edge off it.
Right.
You know, so it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. So getting it right from the beginning is paramount, because then your child goes up, it becomes a roller coaster every year, sometime in the year. And I asked for an educational therapist to assess him. Yeah, and one thing, during the assessment, I had just come out of hospital, so he was unstable because I've been away for a while, and it had affected him. A week later, they said we were going to assess the child. And because I had applied for it earlier, I said yes. It didn't click my mind that because he's going through that emotion, it will affect that assessment.
Okay.
So that assessment then turned out that he doesn't meet the criteria for them to change the school. But there's a major factor that is affecting the child, because the child is currently in an emotional state, which means it's not like any normal day. Right. And these are things that parents should always be cautious about, because your child cannot talk. You are the advocate for your child, and you should always have this in mind. But the thing is, there's so much waiting lists that when you get an appointment, you are like, let me go in quick, else I don't want to be waiting for so long. So it's a very, very tricky thing. It's a hands-on thing. So yeah, it's tricky.
Okay. Amma is asking, what age range do I teach? Do I even know? I teach grades 6 to 10 in what we call here a Realschule. We have German school system is a little bit complicated. And I also lecture at the uni level. I lecture business students in business communication. So that's what I do. And she writes that the stakeholders are there to help proactive parents to protect the rights of the child. Yes, that is true. But sometimes we get this feeling that sometimes some stakeholders feel like they want to take over and tell us more about our children than it is necessary. Like I've talked about my daughter and her dyslexia, and how she was just labeled as lazy. I had to advocate and demand for a test, because I know once she has the right diagnosis, I can get the right help for her. But her teacher kept saying, no, she doesn't need that. She's seeing kids who have that. Julia doesn't have that. She's just lazy. She just doesn't want to do the work and things like that, because on some days when she's really motivated, she gives her best. And then on some days she doesn't give her best, and things like that, But I am glad that I fought for her to be able to get that, because some people do tend to overstep their boundaries, or sometimes they feel like because we are not trained in that field, no shade to Ellen. But sometimes
No
they feel like
offense,
because we are not trained in that field, they
in
don't
terms
know
of my,
that us. But as a teacher, I could tell that there's something wrong with my child, because even though I'm not a therapist, I come into contact with a lot of children. So I can already tell when something is, a little bit off, and I can ask, I'm glad that I could be able to, and I hope other moms will also advocate for their children in the same way.
Yeah, Nancy, in terms of my research, I research in mental health. And one of the key people, all the research that I've done with service users. And I believe in that powerful experience of the people with the lived experience. So though I'm the professional, I have the knowledge, I always go with what my service user from their perspective. What are they telling me? From the parents' perspective, what are they telling me? Every module that I deliver, there should be a service user on to come tell us from their perspective, from their experience, what they think is going on. So that's a very, very powerful. And in the UK, mostly, I think it's a big thing now. The user perspective. So the child who is going through that experience, the mom, who you are more knowledgeable in autism. I'm talking about autism, global developmental delay, cerebral palsy. I know a little bit of everything. But you have one in one area. You are with raising this child, you living the 24 hours with her. The 30 minutes that I have, I may see multiple children, but they are all presenting differently. So your experience, do not ever downplay it. It's very, very powerful. And if you can argue that this is us, this is our situation, that is where that voice needs to be acknowledged, and you have to be supported from your perspective, from what your choice, what you feel is. Because at the end of the day, it's you and your child who is going to like be on this journey. It's your journey. Me as a therapist, you are making a stop at my place. Let's say, like in Ghana, it's a trotro. I board your trotro, you drop me off, you carry on. Okay, so it's your experience, and even sometimes the carer's role, like the mom, like a lot. You have been in this journey with the child all throughout. So your experience, the information you are giving me is as much valuable as what I have learned that it may be presenting. Okay. I want to draw this conversation a little to another side. We're focusing on children with special needs, but I think most of the things that we are saying is even true for those children who don't have any issues in our houses.
Yes.
It's very, very true.
That's exactly what I said in the beginning. I said, even though this discussion is about children with special needs, it's for children across board.
Yeah.
Because in schools, teachers have to deal with different children who are at different stages, especially like for me right now, I'm dealing, especially kids in the 8th, 9th grade and the 10th grade, those who are not getting into puberty, they are going through all kinds of emotions, So it's like I see them in a certain way. Their parents see them in a different way, and I'm sure their friends also see them in other ways as well. So it cuts across board, especially for those of us who are living in the diaspora. I feel like we have to always be advocating for our kids, fighting for them, showing up for them in a way that others do not show up for them. Okay, moving on, I wanted to talk about something that's a bit sensitive. But before I do that, Amma wrote something here that she said, of course, schools serve many children and cannot entertain a child like a parent who works one-on-one with their child daily. Of course. And as long as you're proactive parents, no matter the stumbling block you come across, you can keep, pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. Anyway, and she also says, of course, stakeholders who think parents are incompetent will attempt to take. Yes, and that is very much here. And the biggest problem for those of us who live in non-English speaking European countries is that, the inability to speak a language is normally sometimes associated with dumbness, that you are dumb, Even in our societies, deaf and dumb is, like a bad word that we use for people who can't speak. So sometimes when you go to a doctor in France, in Norway, and you can't speak their language, they think probably you've never been to school, you don't know anything, and then they try to take over and tell you what to do with your child, And sometimes it has a lot to do with racism. Sometimes it's just their bias that they are just following, and they even think they're trying to help you, but they are not, Some genuinely think they are doing the best for you and your child, Some go ahead to even sometimes recommend a child being removed from your home, thinking that the disability is something that you can't deal with, or it's too much for you. However, let me talk about something that is a bit sensitive here. When it comes to you as a parent making the heart-wrenching decision that, okay, I need help, but the kind of help that I need means placing my child in a group home or in a facility where they can be better assisted. How or at what point should parents come to this decision?
For me, that's a tough one. And I think that's my motivator for going to the extreme. Because for me, what I understand is neurologically, the child is still developing. And it's what you model for the child that would help the child progress. So the early intervention is vital. Go through that process. But if your child is old and becomes a danger to themselves, then if you don't have that support at home, if you can't afford to pay for people to be with a child 24/7, then you should look into putting the child in a place where that support can be provided. But if you can afford it, go for it. I know a couple of parents who have had to put their child in a state facility, and they have to go and visit the child. Sometimes the child comes with them to church, and then they drop the child back. There are serious cases where the child decides, they get anxiety, they want to commit suicide. And I know someone who decided to live with their child. They don't put knives anywhere around the house because they've seen the child trying to harm themselves with a knife before. And at night, it's like they are constantly keeping an eye with alarm systems and everything. It's not an easy life. So when you have that situation and you know that you are incompetent in looking after your child, then it's better for them to be elsewhere than to be charged with murder of your own child. Because if anything happens, you or whoever was around the child at that time will be held responsible.
Right.
Yeah, this is a very tricky decision, and we don't come to it
we don't.
Yeah, so as I was saying, understand and know the pathway that you are on. If, let's say, now that you have all the strength, you can do it. In case your strength fails you, or in case you are no longer capable, think ahead. Have that plan. Look at possible options that you can explore. And even whilst the child is with you, I think in the UK, there are some facilities like respite facilities. Carers definitely need that. You need that time kind of time off sometime. I know you love your child, but the bed like it can be very, very challenging for most of the time. So if you can think ahead and like work it out, you're still supporting the child to get all the abilities. You know, when they are the babies that you can cuddle, you can move. But these days, I have a definition for the 15-year-old that the height and everything is like me. I don't know whether they're a child or they are adults, you know, and it can be very, very challenging. Yeah, so it's not easy, but if it has to be done for your own mental health that we've mentioned, for the well-being of both you and the child, sometimes you have to make that difficult decision. But the thing is, if you make the decision, that does not mean it's the end. Still work with the facility. Don't use that as okay, hello, bye-bye, that's it, end of life. You pack your bag and you move. Still work with them. Make sure that like uh, uh, this example that you've given, the child coming, going to church with the family, still feel part of the family. But sometimes the extreme cases, if you have some of the children at home, it's not the best for either of you. Yeah. So
Yeah. And sometimes also you should think about these if you have other siblings because they feel sidelined. All the attention is being given to this particular child. So the other one tends to seek attention elsewhere. You don't want two
That
troubles
can be dangerous. Yeah.
on your hand. And also, Ellen having mentioned the respite, it's difficult at the moment. You won't get the respite. For instance, for me, I don't get the respite that I need. The hours that is being given is nothing. Still, it's being based on the needs of your child, and you will have to your social worker. I have never had, one thing too. The professional sees you, they see the parent, and they assess the parent, and they see the parent as competent. That also adds up to whatever they write. So most parents then tend to pretend. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do that. The more you seem weak, the more you get whatever you are inquiring for. So some pretend, especially those from the Asian community, they just sit there. When you ask them a question, they're like, then you say anything, they keep knocking their nudging. It's a strategy for you to do all the work and give them everything they need. Mm-hmm. So it's tricky when they ask you and you are doing the work and they see the work, they see the child progressing. What you actually need, they don't provide for you. So and if your child is capable, for me, I don't get it because my child is active. He goes, I take him places. When they assess him, he's always on the balance line. But when his caseworker comes, she's like, he's not getting right enough. When she goes, they don't give her more that the child needs. So it becomes a struggle. So sometimes you need to find the right professional. Let them know what you are going through in the beginning. Another thing is with the DLA form. When I was filling my child's DLA form, I was filled with a lot of anointing and with hope that my child is going to be healed in the name of Jesus. So filling that form is like, how many times can your child sleep in the night? Even if he's not sleeping, I try to be positive on the form. But the advice is be in the worst case scenario. Use the days that you felt that you couldn't cope with the situation to fill the forms throughout. So make it be as worst as possible, because you'll be shocked that all those things, after you fill the form and then he's being put on a rate, you will realize that your child needs more than you have bargained for.
Right.
So the advice is to feel it on the worst day that you've experienced with your child. Let it be the norm for you. Else, if you can't fill the form, go and see somebody and let the person do it for you. But they will ask you questions and give them the worst day in each particular instance. If your child doesn't sleep one night and it was waking up maybe 3 times, say, yeah, he woke up 5 times, 6 times in the night. How many, can he wear his coat? You say no. Can he do this? In the days that your child refuses to do anything, that is the scenario that you have to present. You know, because that's what will be used to assess it, you know. So
Right.
that's the only advice I can give parents to help them when they are filling such forms. They should put away the hope at that time and look at the worst case scenario. When you finish, you pick up your hope and walk with it.
Okay, ladies, before we wrap up, I have one last question, and it's, how do we protect our special needs children when we are no more? How can parents have a plan when you are no more? Because in best case scenario, our kids are going to outlive us. So how should parents have a plan in place that when I'm no more, this is what is going to happen with my child. This is how my child's life is going to be.
I think the first thing, I remember I had a female judge friend and I was unwell one day, and when I came back, she was like, have you done your will? That question puts me in a depressive state for 3 months. And she's white. They think about those things. First thing, their priority. Do you have life insurance? Who is going to be your next of kin if you are no more? Who is your child going to be with? Have you thought of these things? In your family, when you look at everybody, who do you think your child can cope with when you are no longer there? You know, and it's an emotional state, I must tell you. No matter who you are, when it comes to your mind, you need some mental fortitude to go through this process, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
And the most difficult part is looking back at your family and you can't pinpoint anybody.
That's the sad part, because
especially with us from Africa, they don't understand that you are not ready. And imagine you are living in the diaspora and you don't know who to go to. The other option is to think about foster care. Are you thinking about someone adopting your child? You have to send your mind on that journey. Walk through it. Type it down and put it somewhere for the time being. But ensure that you have life insurance. So whoever, if you're no more, is no longer there, it will, you've written, when my child gets to this stage that he will need more support financially, that health insurance is towards that need, so that he doesn't become a burden. Because after 18 years, nobody will feel responsible for the child anymore. But you would have done your child some good if you have put some money towards them finding a private residence or all these things, or some money for them to sustain themselves so that they wouldn't be dragged around by, it's a difficult one. But I think these are the things that I have listed and thought of that was tough. It was tough. But you have to put yourself through that.
Right.
For the sake of your child.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ellen?
Yeah, Marv, it's all said, knowing where you are at and where you are going and the plan to put in place is the advice. Yes, now you can do as much as you can, but when you are no longer there, what happened? Yeah. So we think in advice, very practical. Who is going to take care? Do you need something like to support the child or put something there, power of attorney, put
Mhm.
all these things in place such that there is somebody who is standing in. Because in the first instance, that child is the person who will be removed from the siblings should the unfortunate happen in the first instance, if there are other children. Yeah. And this can be very, very challenging. I've not dealt with any case at that point since in my practice, but I can foresee some of the things conversation. It can be a very difficult conversation if you have to really be involved and there are no plan in place. Yeah. Even like where the child will stay. Like if you are in one geographical area and the only placement that is available is, let's say, far off, like a journey, like even your friends, how if they choose to support or step in, can they go that far of the placement? So all these things may have to be considered. Yeah.
And also these private places that the kids go, it's not like when you apply, you get it immediately. it
No?
takes it takes some time.
Yeah, the main thing is even out of Bara or something, like very far off from where the child has originally grown up, and we know that the environment that the child is in, if they have to go learn from a completely different environment, their level of function is going to be very different. Let's say they have been going to a college, they've settled in well, they can do the public transport, and all of a sudden they are removed to a different place. They have to learn the new bus system and everything. They can't go to they have to relearn all these things. So even it will stop the progress that they've made, and it will complicate the situation of the loss of the caregiver who was involved. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, ladies, thank you very much for this wonderful discussion that we've had today. It's been very insightful. I've really enjoyed it. And like I said, if you're watching us, this is not just for special needs kids. This is something that we all need to think about, because normally we all believe that, okay, we are going to grow old before we leave our kids, but nobody knows. Anything can happen at any time. Also, the challenges that special needs parents face with educational facilities, with stakeholders, is the same as parents who don't have special needs. It cuts across board because raising another human being is challenging. It is challenging. It's something we've never done before. We are all doing it for the very first time, and there's going to be a lot of trial and errors. So if it happens, don't knock yourself too hard. Reach out to somebody, educate yourself, regardless of what it is. If it's some behavioral difficulties your teenager is going through, or it is a physical disability or an emotion, whatever it is, like Marv and Ellen have told us, learn more about it, be informed so that you're not too much into your emotions, so that when you speak to experts, you are speaking from a place of just fact. This is the help I need. How can you give me the help? So, ladies, thank you for joining me, and until next week, bye-bye.
Yes. Bye bye. Sorry for being late. No
No
introduction
problem. You did this much.
of myself. I just jumped in. Yeah, so we meet next week.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.